We're recording and live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the virtual meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission for the 28th of April, 2022. And please be aware, like all these virtual meetings via Zoom, the meeting is being recorded. In fact, if you ever need to check on the city website, each board has a page on the Newburyport Historical Commission's page. You can access recordings of prior meetings. In just a minute, I'll take the roll call, but I'm giving Caitlin and everyone possible attendees a couple minutes to get on board, so to speak, because we're looking for everyone. Let's see here. I'm waiting for an additional panelist to join. So in the meantime,
I just have a quick question. Where is the wave hand? Because I don't see it on my screen.
Usually it's at the bottom of the Zoom screen. There's a row of buttons, and one of them says raise hand.
It should be not showing that. That's interesting.
It should be there somewhere, and that raises a good point, and I'm about to do my little spiel here. So the commissioners have their audio enabled, and we will, if applicants will have their audio enabled when it's their turn to speak, and if and when there's a public hearing, you can be unmuted to make your public comment. In order to be recognized, you need to use that functionality of the Zoom meeting that my commissioner Andrew Bernhardt just mentioned, that somewhere on the controls, and it varies depending on what platform you're using, whether it's like an iPhone, iPad, Android.
Mine was different.
Laptop.
Mine was hit participants, then a box showed up.
All right. Well, there you go. So there's that. So anyway, raising your hand will allow you to be recognized, so we can unmute you. You will also have to unmute yourself on your end. If by any chance you're dialing in from or touch toning in from a phone, it's *9 to raise or lower your hand, and *6 to mute and unmute your audio. So with that, I'm not seeing, so we don't have Mark or Malcolm yet, correct, Caitlin?
That is right. I did see Malcolm for a moment, but he has since dropped off the call, so perhaps he'll try again.
All right. Well, let me take a quick attendance here, and we'll get started with the agenda. So in alphabetical order, Commissioner Andrew Bernhardt, you're here, right?
I'm here.
Malcolm Carnwath is not here yet. Mark Sandrone, we do not see him yet either. Christopher Fay, I know you're here, right? And Joe Morgan?
Here.
As here, thank you. And that was Chris. And the chair, Glenn Richards, is also here. So I'm going to make a note here that Carnwath and Sandrone are either late or absent. I was going to announce this later as part of my updates from the chair, but since we're taking attendance, you may have noticed I did not call Mr. Peter McNamee. Peter, to my great distress and dismay, has submitted a letter of resignation, and I'll talk more about that at the end as to what his reasons may have been. So he unfortunately will not be joining us tonight and at future meetings, unless that should eventually change. Okay, well, we do have a quorum. If we have, let me just check, Bernhardt, Fay, Morgan, and Chair, that is 4 people, right? So we do legally have a quorum. So we can at least start. I understand the first order of business is a review of a demolition delay application for 257, 259 Water Street. Those of you who were here 2 weeks ago might recall this. The board voted that the structure is historically significant and preferably preserved. We imposed a demolition delay because there was opposition to certain aspects of the plans, most notably the 2 dormers on either side of the roof. I believe we have Ben Taylor to speak today. Is that right? I see he's in. And Ben, you're you are unmuted on our end. Will need to unmute yourself on your end as well. Once that's done, we'll be able to hear you, and you can briefly take us through the changes to the plans, and then if we have any questions or anything, we can take it from there. So do you want to go ahead?
Yep, great. Thanks very much, Chair. Ben Taylor, covering for attorney Lisa Mead tonight for Mead, Tellerman and Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport for the record. And actually with me is Matt Langist from Scott Brown Architects. Scott Brown actually couldn't be here tonight either. So Matt's filling in on that end. And also Bud and Sandy Manley, the owners and applicants of the property, are also in attendance to my knowledge. So with that, as the chair has already indicated, we're here basically to pick up where we left off. We're seeking the release of the demolition delay and the more formal written comments, as this is in the FEMA flood zone. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. Yeah, as the chair mentioned, I think it was near unanimous the prior meeting that the dormers weren't a good look. So those have been removed, and skylights have instead been proposed, as Scott Brown had discussed pretty in depth with the commission. Then also on the westerly side elevation, where Peter McNamee had mentioned the windows kind of being out of rhythm, where some were smaller than the existing. Those have all been updated to be of uniform size and pattern. And then, just to bring your attention to a few changes that weren't discussed but are different in the plans you'll see in a moment. From our prior proposal, you'll see there's a new portico on the easterly side entry on the structure. You'll also see to the right of that portico on that same east elevation, I believe it was an oversight in our prior plans, but actually what exists there on the first floor is a bank of 3 windows. It's not a single window. So in our prior proposal, there was a single window proposed there to match what's above it on the second floor. But now what is proposed is to just keep that bank of 3 windows there as it exists. And then finally, the windows on the rear gable have been made slightly larger to accommodate for loss of light that may be happening from not having the dormers. So that's particularly on the attic level. So you'll see now it's 3 windows as opposed to 2. It does match the 3 windows that are below it on the second floor in the rear elevation. So you will see that in a moment. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here are the elevations. And before I turn it over to Matt Langis of Scott Brown Architects, I just wanted to point out one detail that you'll see on all our elevations. So if you can just zoom in, Caitlin, please, to the bottom proposed elevation where the red is. Yeah, perfect. So what Scott did to these updated plans, you'll see it again on all the elevations, is in the red bubble, anything that's pointed out there in the elevations with an arrow, and also the text detailing what the what's going on in the bubbles. So that's what's changed in the elevations from our prior proposal. So if something's not in the red bubble, the intention is that it's the same as what we previously had. So I just wanted to be clear on what exactly that was. So with that, I think I'm going to turn over to Matt, and he can briefly go over the elevations, and we can go into the request. Thanks.
Yeah, so technically there should be a red bubble over the skylights too.
Yeah.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Thanks, Ben. Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Langis, Scott Brown Architects, filling in for Scott tonight, 48 Market Street, Newburyport. So this is fairly quick. The red bubbles, it's not shown in the front elevation, but the red bubble for the skylight is on the side elevation. There really isn't, any sort of covered protection from the elements, so that's the reason for the portico. But it's done in a traditional fashion, so it has tapered columns, bed mounting, crown, So it is, appropriate for the age and the style of the house. Caitlin, could you go to the next slide, please? So here you get a better view of the skylights. The one on the left serves a bedroom, the one in the middle is a bathroom, and the three on the right are a bonus from the attic floor. The triple window, which is the existing window on the first floor, is called out in both the existing and proposed drawings. The thought behind that was there's a kitchen right behind this, but so we want to try to flood that space as much natural light as possible. So the portico, might take a little natural light away. There's also some landscaping that might as well. So we're thinking that keeping the existing there and getting some more natural light in that kitchen. Next slide, please. So this is Ben had touched on this. These three windows that were added in the attic floor. This is to compensate for some of the light loss from the added dormers. So we do have skylights that have a certain makeup for that natural light, but this is also to get just a little bit more light in that attic floor, and those windows match the windows below that are on the second floor in the proposed drawing at the bottom. Next slide, please. So these are the skylights on the other side. Also showing on this side are the windows that are sort of matching, the style throughout the existing box of the house, which is sort of a traditional 2/2. I believe Scott had mentioned at a previous meeting that the windows are a high quality window with simulated divided lights, and the exterior 3D, Muntin bars that are, extruded from, from the outside, the 3D Muntin bars, so they have a much thicker profile. And other than the DCOD calculations, that sort of wraps up the presentation on my end. I believe Scott had touched on materiality and cedar shakes and clapboards from the last meeting, but unless there are any questions, I'd turn it back over to Ben and be here to answer any questions.
Thanks, Matt. So Caitlin, can we just hop ahead to slide 8, please? Thanks. So tonight, as you probably are aware, we're seeking 2 determinations. One, to release the demolition delay. The second one is kind of that the twist of this being in a FEMA flood zone. So you've probably seen this and heard this a number of times already, but we're looking for you to issue a written finding based upon the evidence submitted as part of the record, setting forth, firstly, the commission affirmation of the historical significance of the structure as reflected by the materials submitted. Secondly, that the structure is significant within the context of its location in the historic setting of the Joppa Historic District. And lastly, notwithstanding the implementation of the proposed renovations, the structure will retain its aforementioned historic significance. So with that, I'm happy to leave it off to the commission and answer any questions you may have. I did provide some existing photographs after this to the extent that those are needed to aid discussions. But with that, that's all I have for right now.
Okay, thanks very much. Since this is, in a sense, I think of this as a continuation of the public hearing. So, and since the plans have changed, I'll open a brief public comment period to see if there are any public comment. If there are any, if there are not, then we'll move on. So in a public comment period, if you have a comment you would like to make for, against, or neither, just raise your hand so we are aware of it, and we'll unmute you, and you'd state your name and address and your comment. And for the sake of time, please do try to keep them brief. So I'll allow a few seconds here to see if there are any. I'm just looking down here. Caitlin, I did get a notice that Malcolm had technical problems and he's not coming tonight. And I'm not seeing any interest in public comment, so I will officially close the public comment period. Make a note here. To the commissioners, did anyone have a clarification question for either the attorney, Mr. Taylor, or Mr. Langis, for the architect firm? I know I did have one about the windows, but I believe he already answered it. I was wondering if they would have exterior Muntin bars, and he said they would, which is good. And if not, I can go around. And by the way, to the applicant, I plan to take this as two separate votes. We'll take a vote on the revised plans and then a separate motion on that letter that you discussed. So let's see, Joe Morgan, any thoughts or comments for, against, or anything?
I have no comments. This is acceptable to me.
Okay, thanks. How about Andrew? Any thoughts?
Absolutely. I think they made some nice adjustments.
Okay. So, and Mr. Fay? I don't see your video, so you'll, you're there. I do see you're still in the meeting. Oh, while we're waiting for Chris. Chris, if you can hear me. Yep, yeah,
Yes, I'm back.
Yep.
You just froze. No, I think the changes are great. So I'm in favor.
Okay.
No
All
problem.
right. Would someone care to go ahead and make a motion to approve the revised plans?
I make the motion to approve the applied plans.
Okay. Approve the modified plans. So is there a
Modified
second?
plans.
Thank you, Andrew. Is that seconded?
This is Joe. I second that.
Okay, thank you, Joe. And I'll skip the story this time, but going in reverse alphabetical order. Joe Morgan, your vote.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fay, Christopher Fay.
Yes.
Thank you. Andrew Bernhardt.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes on that as well. I did have a so the before we take the other motion and vote, I just want to say, especially since the owner applicant is here, first of all, thank you for being flexible. I do understand that it is a sacrifice of a certain amount of ceiling height and space on your third floor to go with the skylights in lieu of the dormers. I thought a lot about this, and I hope you understand that and this pertains to us issuing a statement about the historical significance. Obviously, the first two, in the presentation, there were three items that the applicant or that you and as relayed by the attorney wanted, right? That it's historically significant. Number two, that it's it has a significance within the context of its location, and three, that it will retain its significance despite these proposed renovations. Now, the sticking point last time was we felt that the dormers were enough of a disturbance to the historic structure in terms of its massing, its form, that those would be lost. So I just want you to know that I personally am okay with issuing a written memo to that effect, but it will state that specifically that that maintenance of that historical significance is contingent on the house remaining in that format without roof dormers on that original part of the building. So any questions or comments on that?
I don't at this time, Chair. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that point. Yeah, I mean, it's the plan submitted, so they don't have
Yep.
dormers. So
Yep.
Understood.
Well, yeah, and just to make the invisible elephant in the room visible, it's that in theory, this applicant or some future owner could come back at some point in the future with a so-called by right or an exempt dormer application, which would have an impact on that. I don't know of any practical way of somehow prohibiting that legally, but anyway, that's kind of why I made that point. Okay, so is there a motion that that the commission supports the chair sending a memo with those 3 points that have already now been discussed to death? The motion would read I'll tell you what, I'll read a proposed motion, then someone could either move it or not. That's the commission supports the chair issuing a letter attesting that the structure is historically significant. It is significant within the context of its location in the historic setting of the Joplin Historic District, and it is expected to retain this significance even after the renovations that have been proposed tonight.
I second that.
Okay. All right. So I guess usually the chair doesn't make motions, but I guess we'll make an exception to that. So we'll say the chair made that motion. It was seconded. I believe it was Andrew, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. All right. So again, Mr. Morgan, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Fay? Okay, well, Chris is unmuting himself. I'll skip over him to do Andrew Bernhardt, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. The chair is okay with that, obviously. Chris?
I'm back. Yeah, I'm a
you're
yes.
back. Okay, very good. So let me fill you in. Okay. Okay, so so Ben, if I may be so informal, so the plan as updated and modified is approved, lifting the demo delay. I'll notify the planning board, and they'll in turn notify the building commissioner and so on. So that's good to go. And I will send a memo to the planning board to be forwarded to MTC about this historical significance thing. So you should be able to get that in a few days.
Okay,
Okay.
great. That sounds great. Thank you very much for your time and considerations on this.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, 1 second, please.
Chair Richards, may I ask a question? This is Joe Morgan.
Mr. Morgan, you have the floor.
Thank you. In response to your clarification regarding the possibility of installing by right dormers, which are exempted from the demo delay ordinance, what kind of future enforcement is there of such a if an owner wanted to do that? I'm understanding that our deliberations are for this particular permit and would not extend into and be relevant for future permits. Is there a time frame that applies to our particular approval of this permit application? Would it extend into the future a certain amount of time and therefore prevent something that you suggest might happen?
The short answer is basically no. There is a possibility that they do need to go to the ZBA for a special permit for certain nonconformities regarding setbacks and so on. It's theoretically possible that the ZBA could, they have the capability of imposing a condition upon their permitting but it's a bit of a stretch. I will say that I had discussions with the planning office about this, and it's kind of what you said about our decisions. They don't have any kind of life in perpetuity like certain planning permits and zoning variances and so on. Those have a lifetime. They stay with the property and so on. And of course, if there's a preservation restriction, that would also be able to do it. I will say though that I would like to, and I've been thinking about this actually for a long time, to make a slight modification to that dormer exemption to have it, not be an automatic by right dormer, but to buildings of, a certain antiquity. But even that's, that would be, the city council would have to buy into that and approve it and all that. So I guess the short answer is we don't really have a legal thing right now. So I don't know that there's any, I plan to state in my memo that this the historical significance of this particular structure is, I don't know if I'm not sure if contingent is the right word, but that it assumes that it's without dormers, and I can go into that a little bit about that. 20 years from now, if when all that, when we're all pushing up daisies, who knows if that will still be enforceable. So yeah, I've wrestled with that one, but I don't have a really good answer for you, Joe.
So we haven't, I don't think we're saying specifically that the addition of the dormers now or in the future diminishes the building's historical significance. I mean, I don't think we're saying that. Is that what you're proposing? Is that the dormers, if they were to be installed in a future scenario, or if they had been approved this time, would that have removed, for the purposes of the FEMA application, would that have removed enough of the historical? Would that have compromised the building to an extent where FEMA, we could not have represented the continued historical value of the building to FEMA?
Well, my sense of the board, Joe, is that it would have compromised the form sufficiently that the commission would feel that it had lost enough of its historical significance to disqualify it. That's something that FEMA isn't the one that's sort of making that recommendation. They're simply evaluating the what the position is of the applicant. In other words, it's up to the applicant to provide this evidence. That's why they want the written statement from the historical commission and so on. So, and then FEMA or the building, I'm not sure if it's might be the building commissioner, will review that and make a call. And who knows, they could, well, I guess they have to, I think it's somewhere in the various application, it said that, there's no guarantee that they'll even grant it, but that they hope that they can convince the people responsible for the flood zone or regulations that it would be better to let them make certain changes, like moving utilities out of the cellar and do various, mitigation things, rather than try to lift the whole thing or demolish the whole thing and build something different.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. All right. And good question though, Joe. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I think some of this kind of, well, it's a bit of a tar ball. Okay, the next item on tonight's agenda, it's DCOD advisory review. That stands for Demolition Control Overlay District, DCOD. The DCOD ordinance requires that when an applicant seeks to demolish a structure, or which could mean an entire structure or just over 25% of a structure, and there are certain other conditions as well, that applicant has to get a special permit to do so from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The Historical Commission's, the Historical Commission's role in the process is to provide a, quote, historical report, or sometimes called advisory report, same thing, to the ZBA. So what we're going to do this evening is we're going to hear from the applicant or their spokespeople about what it is they seek to do to this particular property on Market Street, 22 Market Street to be precise, and based on what they present and our judgments, I, perhaps with help from some of you, will draft a historical report. What I typically do is get a report drafted between meetings. So I would hope to come back to our next meeting, which would be, let's see, this is April, May 12th. Would that be right, Caitlin? Second Thursday, May 12th?
That is. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we'd come back May 12th to approve that report or not, and pass it on to the ZBA. Is it Mr. Duchesne's and Mac Langus let's see who's here. And it's some.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Joe, your hand is up. Did you have another question, comment, or are you all set?
I'm sorry, Chair. I'll lower it. Yes, I'm okay.
Okay. So who do we have speaking for 22 Market Street here tonight?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair. And Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson.
Okay.
Also with me, Matt Langus from Scott Brown Architects.
Okay, very good. Who would like to review? Now, you've got a fairly complex project, so what we're gonna, I think you understand that what we are focused on as a historical commission is looking at the structure as it is now and what you propose to do to it with your changes, and draw up our conclusions that we can summarize in a report to the ZBA. So do you want to go ahead and kind of tell us what you plan to do, and as much historical information as you feel might be helpful to us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that would be fine. Caitlin, if I could go to the next slide, please. Oop.
Having troubles with that, Caitlin?
It was. I
okay.
think I got it. It looks like the PowerPoint is struggling a bit, but I believe I do have the rendering, so maybe we can just work off of those. I have the renderings, the historical information, and also the neighborhood context photos. It seems like the PowerPoint that was submitted isn't quite working, but I have a lot of the most important information ready for you, Attorney DeShane.
All right, Caitlin, thank you. I appreciate your efforts. So I will, I'll just run through some of the slides very quickly, and then we can just get to the point where we can utilize the renderings and the elevation plans and that kind of stuff. But as I said, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Douglas DeShane from Finneran and Nicholson. This is the first time that I've appeared before your board, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so. I've been with Finneran Nicholson for just about a year, so this is my first meeting with this commission. Again, with me, Matt Langus from Scott Brown Architects. As a quick project summary, what my clients would like to do is to convert the property from its existing current use as a lodging house to a new use as an inn. And as determined by the zoning enforcement officer, we do need a special permit under the demolition control overlay district. So we're here before this commission requesting an advisory report. Quickly, the existing conditions: the property's been used as a lodging boarding house since 1980. We have a memorandum from the Newburyport Code Administrator back then allowing approval of the property as a lodging house. Just some zoning information: the lot is pre-existing non-conforming for both area and frontage, and the structure, as is typical of a lot of in-town buildings, is non-conforming as to setbacks and lot coverage. With respect to historical information, just some general stuff that I was able to put together. The property was built in 1775, although the original owner appears to be unidentified. In 1951, it was owned by John Horton, a shoemaker in the city. And then sometime prior to 1872, it was conveyed to Thomas Foster, who had a shop on State Street where he sold watches, jewelry, and crockery. As you know better than I, it has Georgian architectural style, and as I said, has been used as a boarding house since at least 1980. I have provided to you as part of my filing all of the Macris information I was able to obtain, as well as historical data sheets, and I was able to find a number of photographs, historical photographs of the structure and the neighborhood, and I also did provide a significant number of photographs showing the the setting of the building within the neighborhood in general. So I believe you have all of that information. As I said, the proposed use is to convert or to renovate 2224 Market Street to an inn. Currently, the building at 2224 and the building at 26 Market Street are connected by this interconnecting stairway you can see on this elevation plan. Our proposal is to remove that stairway, to disconnect the buildings, and then the building at 26 Market Street is going to be restored back to an allowed by right 1 or 2 family residential structure. So we've actually kind of, although it's not part of this hearing, we've shown you our hopes with respect to the front elevation of 26 Market Street as we move forward. However, we are focused on 2224, and it is proposed to be renovated into a six-unit inn. With respect to the proposed changes to the building, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown, and then I'm going to let Matt give you a more detailed run through of the architectural changes being proposed. But I will say that Scott Brown, who, as you know, is unable to be here tonight, has met with the Newburyport Preservation Trust, and he went over with them what they were hoping to accomplish, and actually did integrate a number of the comments and suggestions made by the trust into these proposed or into these elevation drawings. So as I said, we're going to remove the stairway connecting the two. We're going to remove a single-story structure and deck that is currently on the rear of the property. And again, I'll go into this in a little more detail. We're going to remove an existing second-story deck over an existing single-story addition on the back of the structure. And then we are going to construct a second story over that existing single-story addition that we're removing the deck from. We're going to construct a 2-story addition with a deck and a stairway. And then we are proposing a construction of doghouse dormers on the front of the structure. I do want to say that much of the work we're doing, especially in the back of the building, is to provide safe and adequate egress and access to the second and third floors. As you know, under the building code with an inn, you need to have correct access and egress points. So a lot of what we're doing is to accomplish that. We are, as I think Matt will tell you in a moment, we are proposing to restore and preserve the siding, windows, shutters, trim. We are proposing to remove and restore chimneys with restoration bricks. And because these proposed changes result in the modification to 37.46% of the structures out of walls, that's why one of the bases for us being here this evening. I do want to point out, however, that a lot of the modifications to the outer structure are actually the removal of 6 sets of modern sliding glass doors. So that's a lot of wall covering that we're modifying, but we're not necessarily impacting historical siding, but in fact, in many cases, bringing it back to what the siding used to look like before the sliding doors were imposed. So with respect to the specific architectural changes, they are annotated on our building elevations that we've provided. And Matt, if you could just run through the various elevations. And what we did do, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Caitlin had graciously suggested that we provide plans showing the existing and proposed elevations for each side on one page, so it would be easier for you to review. So we do appreciate that suggestion, and we've done that. So Matt, if you could, if you could just run through quickly and explain the specific architectural changes that we're proposing for each of the elevations, that would be great. And I can certainly help out if you need be.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Matt Langis, Scott Brown Architects, 48 Market Street. Newburyport, filling in for Scott tonight. So A1 really shows a significant amount of annotations here, but really the biggest change to the front elevation are the 3 doghouse dormers. These are, pretty traditional with a gambrel style roof, and also seen pretty commonly around town. There's actually one right across the street at 7 Market Street. It's pretty similar configuration. But with a traditional gambrel style roof, what we are adding here is a new trim board at that gambrel roof intersection to sort of bring it back to, a more traditional detail that would be in the period of when this house was built. The windows are actually in pretty decent shape. Any windows that are in rough shape are being preserved, repaired, or refinished as needed. There are a couple pieces of band molding at the first floor windows that are a little bit weathered, so those were going to also need replacing. The existing door sound is also going to be preserved. There's several layers of paint on it, but other than that, it looks like it's in pretty good shape. And after some conversation with the Newburyport Preservation Trust, we believe that there may be a transom window behind that piece of trim that's there now. So that new transom window was added to in hopes of, as soon as we uncover that, we believe that there might have been one of these there, when this project had originally been built. As far as the shutters, where the plan is to repair and refinish them, and if they can't be repaired, then we would replace them with a new, wood shutter that is typically manufactured by Timberline or an equal manufacturer, but also include the rust-resistant S shutter holdbacks. Those hardware detail that would typically be on this style and age home. And the siding, the original goal is to repair all of it. And if for whatever reason, if it can't be repaired, then we would replace it. But the goal is to repair that siding. And if not, then it would be new pre-primed red cedar bevel clapboards with a 3 1/4 inch exposure if it does end up needing to be replaced. The other obvious, proposed sort of detail here is removing of those stairs, which is a pretty big impact on the front elevation. Other than that, is just architectural asphalt roof shingles in a pewter gray, which I think would look pretty sharp with how this building is starting to shape up. If you can go to page A2. A lot of these notes carry over around the outside. We are calling out in the existing gambrel of the house, there are a couple of new windows on the other elevation that we'll get to in a second, which we are replacing with a period appropriate wood window. And those are all new windows that are in the original gambrel box only. But on page A2, what we are proposing in the addition in non-main gambrel box is to use a 6/6 double hung window. It's a wood clad combination window with simulated divided lights and half screens. And those are all proposed on the additions, I guess you can say, to that main gambrel. The other annotated notes here are calling out the new egress stairs beyond, which go to the 2nd floor and 3rd floor units, lead step flashing, and then the existing chimney to be taken down below the roof line and just rebuilt with restoration brick. If you can go to page A3, please.
Yeah, are you having trouble, Caitlin, again? With the...
It appears that way. Are you seeing the elevations right now?
No, we didn't see elevation 2.
Yeah.
I can see the thumbnail. I just can't see the actual.
Yeah, the main page,
page.
Part of the screen isn't rendering. Which file are you looking at? Is it the one uploaded on the 28th, or that's the presentation? I wonder if do you have any tabs you can close at this point? Maybe there's.
Does look like we're having a little difficulty here showing some of these elevations. So if you wanted to perhaps, let's see. So I am having difficulty pulling up these elevations right now. Chair, what would you like to do at this point?
Well,
Mr. Chairman, might
yeah.
Matt be able to share? Matt, can you bring up those elevation plans by any chance?
well, attendees generally can't screen share it. Let me see.
Ah.
Is it the which file is it? Is it the under the historic and current photos, elevations, A series plans, photo one? Let me just see. Oh yeah, here's the latest. All right, let me see what I got here. Yeah, hang on. Yeah, wonder if it. Let me see if I can download it and share that. 1 second. Just a second here. File. See if I can open this, and if if I can, well, I'm sure I'll be able to open this. If so, can
You can also promote him to a panelist and then he can screen share.
okay, hang on a second here. So this is the can.
So Matt, I promoted you to a panelist. Are you allowed
Yeah,
to share
I
your
can
screen at
try
this
that.
point?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, it says I can't share screen while another participant is sharing, but it looks like I do have the ability to.
So I guess you'll have to stop sharing, Caitlin, to allow.
Okay. See if this works. Can everybody see this screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I'm not sure how much of A2 I went through before. Was anyone able to see any part of A2?
No.
Okay. So I sort of started touching on the existing windows here are in pretty good shape. The ones that are on the opposite elevation are going to be new windows, but proposed to be period appropriate wood windows. Same grill, 6/6. I did also want to add from this elevation, the only windows on the third floor existing right now are the end gambrel windows. So those doghouse dormers are really the only other natural light that this floor would see, and is one of the major drivers to adding those dormers to begin with. The cedar clapboard here I mentioned is also going to be in the front elevation as well. The 6/6 double hung wood clad combination windows are in the addition to the gambrels, and then the new egress stair beyond here is just beyond the second story addition that is over the existing first floor here, which is this slider that is not an appropriately historic element to this building. The only other part of this elevation that I forgot to mention was the existing chimney is being brought down below the roof line and rebuilt with restoration brick. From the rear elevation,
I'm sorry, there are two
I'm
chimneys
sorry.
being removed there as well.
That's correct. Yes, 2 chimneys in the main sort of gambrel box area are being removed. This one, which seems to be much older, is the one that is being rebuilt with the restoration brick.
Could you go back one page? I had a real quick question to
Sure.
ask you. On the existing right side, on the proposed, the lower illustration proposed, there is a line following the roof line to the rear that keeps going straight. Yes. What does that represent?
So
yes.
That is actually from the opposite side. It represents this portion of the second floor addition. It's shown a little bit inaccurately because you should be able to see a couple of pieces of trim there. So it's not actually one line, but it is showing the addition beyond.
I see. Okay, thank you.
From the rear elevation, the new sort of 2-story addition is tearing this roof up here and building over it, but it's also stepping back. So stepping back allows us to have a cleaner transition of materials and not try to match, a siding around the side, but also architecturally is just a little bit richer if it steps back. This new 2-story addition that is over this existing, triple panel glass door is access to the second floor, but also the main egress for both of those second floor units. In the left elevation, so this is where we are proposing new windows inside the main gambrel box, but they're going to be period appropriate 6/6 wood windows. And if possible, any windows that we would be covering up in the process of this addition, the goal is to use any salvage sashes if possible, but only in the main gambrel box. For the cedar shingles, we're proposing white cedar sidewall shingles, and then to weather exposure to match the clapboard right next to it, so the exposure would be the same. And it's a little hard to see here, but this dotted line is the existing first floor addition. We're sort of matching the slope of that addition, obviously bringing it up to a second floor and extending it out, but it is going to be a shed roof style addition that'll match the slope of this existing upper part of gambrel and then tie into that back shed and carry down the rest of the way. This is the existing first floor addition with this the slider here in the deck. The deck is obviously being removed, and the new second story addition will go over the first floor structure. And then obviously the new stairs will be the egress for that floor. And lastly, this is the DCOD calculations. You can see from the rear elevation that a fair amount of this square footage is actually taking up from the existing sliders. So if we were to, Scott and I had sort of reviewed this originally. If we were to not do any part of this and just do this, renovation to the back of the house, the existing sliders in a portion of this back renovation would still put us over that 25%. So being under that in this case was not possible. But the areas that we did add, we sort of tried to do it in a way that was historically accurate and appropriate to this building and this age of a house, and are using materials to match the existing quality and historic character that this house once had. So the goal is to obviously bring that back, but also provide egress and a much needed space for these units on the back in order to get out properly. And that actually concludes my portion of the presentation. I'd be happy to turn it back over to Doug unless there's any specific questions.
Well, just wanted, it's kind of a quibble. I don't think it's not going to materially change anything, but in the demo calculations, wouldn't the holes to the roof for the doghouse dormers, wouldn't those be part of the demo?
So technically, I think the existing, the DCOD calculation refers to exterior wall.
Yeah, okay.
So
I
don't actually think that it would be added to this calculation.
Yeah, that was my thought. I wasn't sure
Okay.
about that. I think you're right, though.
But I can see it being, because it is very vertical, but we understood it to be, part of the roof structure and not an exterior wall.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't really change anything anyway, so.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Attorney Duchesne, I'm not sure if I should stop sharing the screen, or if there's a part of the presentation that you'd like to continue, I can end my screen sharing and give it back to Caitlin.
Well, actually, Matt, I really didn't have anything else to present, but to offer to the commission, that we're available to answer any questions we have relating to this and the historical commission, the historical information I provided. I do apologize, members of the commission, if you had wanted me to present that information, but to be quite honest, I would have really just been copying it off the mattress report and the pages. So I didn't know if you wanted, that repetitious sort of presentation.
No. Yeah, we appreciate that, and I did take a look through there were quite a few historical photographs, so I appreciate you digging those up. That was kind of a nice to have, and and actually sort of two Form Bs, one going back to the 60s. That was I don't usually see that, so that was kind of interesting. I did notice, it's interesting. There were comments about the transom lights because I did notice that change. And so I just want to be perfectly clear. You're not actually changing the door trim. It's just that little piece that it kind of does look odd to have a solid piece like that above the
It
door.
does.
But yeah, and so yeah, you know the piece I'm talking about. Yeah, right
Exactly. This
there.
piece right here.
Yeah,
Correct.
that is it is unusual, and it would not be unusual if to see lights there. So so it'd be interesting to see whether they were either replaced or covered over or something. All right, and I'll just ask my fellow panelists if there's a quick question, but if not, I want to just open it for a brief public comment period if there are any public comments. Any quick questions for clarification before I do that from my peers here on the board? Once, twice, three, okay. All right, so I'll open a brief public comment period. Again, if you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand so we know about it. And when we recognize you, you'll need to unmute yourself on your end. So we'll just allow a few seconds here to see if anyone cares to make a comment. Again, if you do, just state your name and address and make your brief comment. And we'll just allow a few seconds. And if let me pick it here. Just give me a second. Okay.
Hi, Chair. We have Stephanie Nikitic here, and I've unmuted her microphone.
Yep, I was just about to comment to that. So Stephanie Nikitish, if you want to make a comment, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I am actually here to read into the record comments from Thomas Coulterjohn, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust, who was not able to be here tonight. So with your permission, may I do that?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. So I'm quoting Tom Coulterjohn. I compliment the developer and their architect, Scott Brown, for reaching out to the trust in order to preserve the exterior historic features of this building. We support their efforts to preserve these features. Linda Miller, Stephanie Nikitich, and I were asked to look at the building and give our opinion. The applicant has willingly incorporated our suggestions into the plan that you see before you. Early windows and historic trim will be preserved. The gambrel roof shape will be brought back. Front door surround will be preserved and the window transom brought back. The right rear historic chimney will be restored. The building inside has been gutted numerous times, which is not subject to regulatory review. But architect Scott Brown promised to save and possibly reuse the existing Georgian and federal doors that are still inside the building. These are only a few of the items, but I wanted to give you a brief idea of the positive aspects of this proposed project. In addition, the trust supports bona fide inns and hotels in Newburyport's business districts to support tourism without disrupting purely residential areas. Thank you, unquote, Tom Coulterjohn. If I may just add, Mr. Chairman, that part of the review of the trust was the doghouse dormers on the front. And the conclusion by Linda Miller, who is a restoration architect, and everyone else was they are appropriate for the building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can please do lower your hand when you get a chance. I don't see any other hands, so we will close the public comment period, and I'll just tag on to that last thing, especially given the discussion around the dormers on the Water Street property. These are very different in character and style, and you're quite right. I know myself of many examples of this style of dormer on this period and style of property in Newburyport. So yes, I agree that they are not an inappropriate change. Okay, so board, I'll go around the horn here to see what I want to do is for the purposes of drafting the report to see if anyone has any specific comments that they feel need to be called out in the report. So in no particular order, let's see. Joe, anything you want to make sure gets into the report?
No, Chair, I'm fully support the proposed alterations to the existing structure. It looks like a great project, and it's very respectful and in many ways improves on what is already there. So.
Okay, thank you, Joe. How about Andrew? How about you? Any
I,
thoughts? Or
I
comments?
think it's wonderful as well. I really appreciate them dividing the property into two and taking that rampway away or whatever the stairs, the college dormitory stairs.
Yes, it's not exactly the bridge of sighs, is it? Chris, I know you have been muted because and you've got a sore throat, but if you have any comments, or you can just say what they said, or
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good project. I actually like the dormers, so I'll echo what you said as well. And
yep.
So it's a good project. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And who am I missing? I'm missing somebody. Myself, I guess, is the only other person. And yeah, I agree. I'm really looking forward to seeing that ridiculous bridge gone.
We are too.
Yep. And I also agree with the comments that I'm glad that well, I think Mr. Brown, as an architect, is pretty familiar with some of these traditional designs, but I'm glad he was able to work with and the advice and consent, so to speak, of the the Preservation Trust. And yeah, it looks good. And it's just, I can't help but say it one more time. Before I saw the proposed, I kept looking at that doorway because in the Form B, it specifically calls out that it looks like the original Georgian format door entryway, main entrance, had not been disturbed and was original, which a lot of them have been enlarged, replaced, updated with more Victorian era, whatever. But then I was looking at the door, I said, what did they replace the door with a smaller door? Like, what's with that thing on the top? And then I see that the idea that the transom lights there, and I say, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. So I wouldn't be surprised if either you do find something there, or if you just, it's one of those, I don't know, quasi-speculative changes. But I think we all agree it's probably a change for the better. Okay, so we'll do up a report. I don't think any motion or vote is particularly required for this. I plan to return to the board, to this to the commission, with a report for them for their formal approval at our next meeting. I hope that doesn't interfere with your guys' time schedule.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I could check on that. I know Caitlin probably knows better than I. I think we're scheduled to go to the ZBA on the 24th of May. So that gives us plenty of time.
Oh, okay.
Good. Awesome. Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for coming in tonight, and have a good evening.
Well, thank you for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with the board. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
So now, Attorney DeShane, are you still doing screen? Okay, we're back to Caitlin's. Okay, yeah, Caitlin, I see your. I think it's your screen with the agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, we have one more item. See if we can get through this last one expeditiously. The project is 344 Merrimack Street. I'll do a brief explanation because we do have some new members, particularly Mr. Bernhardt. what we're called upon in this case is a little different. The applicant is seeking to is looking for what's called a Section 6C special permit. This is a special permit from the planning board. They are the authority that is capable of granting permission for two structures, two residences to be built on one housing lot. The normal zoning is one structure per lot, but they can grant a permit to have a second one under certain conditions. And there's very specific rules in the ordinance about this. Section 6C has, among several requirements, that when that lot or the lot in question, and I'm quoting here, when the lot contains an existing building listed as contributing, that means contributing in the district data sheets and so on, within the Newburyport Historic District, the application for a special permit shall include a proposed perpetual preservation restriction on said historic building approved by the Newburyport Historical Commission. And there are some other things they need to supply as well. So I believe, let's see, who do we have here to speak? I'm seeing, who is speaking on behalf of this project tonight?
Chair, this is Caitlin. We have Mr. Nick Cracknell is representing the applicant.
Okay, is Nick
I'm
using
here.
the pseudonym Sandy Manley?
No. I don't think so. Can you hear me, Glenn?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, but I don't see you on the participant list. That's what I was wondering about. But yeah, I can hear you just fine. So that's
Take it away.
strange, but in just 1 second. Okay, so Nick, you understand the drill here. I'm looking at the now. It looks like you're to go to the planning board on May 18th.
Correct.
And so I'm hesitating because it's supposed to be, you're supposed to have a proposed perpetual preservation restriction approved, is the word used, by the Newburyport Historical Commission for that. And so we may have issues there because there are some things that are missing and so on. But anyway, why don't we do this? We had a very similar example. You may be aware of this, Nick, if I can be so informal. The house next door, the people on the commission who have been with us for about a year or more are familiar with 342 Merrimack Street, a very similar situation, and Section 6C special permit, etc. So why don't, I know you've got a lot of photographs in the over 30. So, but can you kind of briefly summarize what it is you plan to do? Oh, we have your video as well. Are you in as a panelist?
I think I am.
Yes,
So,
you are. You snuck
right.
in as a panelist. All right, go ahead, Nick. Take
Well,
it.
I think it was due to
Richard,
the
I
technical
promoted him to-
difficulties. Yeah. So, Kate, I see you've got up the baseline documentation. Everybody can see that, right?
Yes.
Making sure. Okay, so thanks, Glenn. That was a great introduction in respect to not only what we're trying to do here, but specifically the 6C process. We may have done it a little bit backwards, but it wasn't intentional. We started with the Zoning Board of Appeals. We went to the Zoning Board of Appeals in December for our first meeting. We had 2 continuances, a whole host of public input that was pretty robust and productive, that led us to a unanimous decision at the ZBA to support the component they were looking at, which is not approving a 6C. That's the planning board's job. But we were there for 2-dimensional variances that were needed to even qualify to request the planning board for a 6C. And you're exactly right. We're scheduled to go on May 18th to open the public hearing. And I'm glad you brought up the timing issue and perhaps the revisions that are going to be needed to make sure that PR has all the subcomponents needed to get it acceptable to not only the commission, but the city and Mass Historic. So if this takes longer, certainly we don't have to have a decision on May 18th. So if this goes into June, it's not the end of the world for us. So we can come back to you several times if need be to get this where you want it and where you're comfortable. before we get back in front of the planning board after opening the hearing on the 18th.
Okay,
So-
and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Nick. Just want to clarify one thing, and that's that because of the delays in getting these through approval by not only by the city but then by the Mass Historical Commission and back to us and so on, I don't expect to have it filed at the registry before you go to the planning board, but what I would want is just to have it in not be a draft, but in its final form,
Right.
that we feel comfortable signing off on. That yep, we've read this. We're good with it, and we can feel comfortable saying to the planning board that we're good with it, and kind of start that ball rolling while you get your other approvals. Does that make sense?
Understood. Absolutely makes sense. We'll get it in a recordable form before we leave your commission. So I don't think I started by introducing myself. Nick Precknell. I reside at 13 Picard Street in Amesbury. I'm representing the owners, Sam and Michelle Kimball, who reside at 344 Merrimack Street. The design team, for what it's worth, Brad Kutcher is the proposed builder for the second new home on the property. Brad is also going to be doing the restoration work on the Levi Carr house, which is the Kimball's house at 344 Merrimack. And again, for what it's worth, Scott Brown did the architectural drawings for the proposed new house, and John Hargraves did the civil work. And we have a landscape architect that's done a series of landscape improvements along the street edge of both Merrimack Court and Union Place. So more importantly, I think to the Historic Commission, we hired Christine Beard from Essex Preservation Consulting to do the baseline documentation, to put together the narrative, the maps, and the photographs needed to inform the PR itself. And Paul Gagliardi is the lawyer or attorney preparing the PR, and I have already discussed with Paul today and yesterday that we need to sit down with the model preservation restriction and make sure all the subcomponents are in there, so we're not going through this 6 times and irritating all of you in the process. So I am just going to give you a thumbnail tonight because I'm expecting, Glenn, that you guys might want to do a site visit to be more familiar with the structure and what we're proposing to do, not just to the Levy Carr house, but also the rest of the site. I think if that's something you're interested in, we have a few dates to propose tonight before we leave the conversation to see if there's an interest and a date we could possibly arrange that over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that would be good. That'd be great.
Great. So like I said, we did obtain a dimensional variance over a 3 or 4 month period that we were before the ZBA. And obviously we're ultimately seeking the 6C approval from the planning board. And everybody here knows that includes a preservation restriction that's fully supported in a recordable form from the Historic Commission. So, to that end, we've submitted a draft PR. And again, I've already stated, we know we got to do a little bit of work on that to make sure all the pieces are there. We have submitted, as you see on the screen, the baseline documentation from Christine, which I really think lay out the unique character defining features of this structure itself. And again, inform the PR as to what components need to be into it, but also inform us on the design team as to how to restore and repair some of the adverse impacts this building has encountered over the last 50 to 100 years. We'll talk about those in just a sec. So I don't know, Kate, whether you can go to see the existing conditions. They're not going to be in that document. They're going to be in my narrative. I think they're not going to be there, but I'll start talking about them to see if you can find. They're not in the baseline documentations. I'm talking about 344 Merrimack, and yeah, I think you'll find them on page 5 and 6 in that document. A couple of maps anyway. So there's the property with the arrow. It's about 14,000 square feet. The house itself is located right up on Merrimack Street at the intersection of Union Place and Merrimack. It is currently a 2-family. It was probably converted in the mid 20th century to a 2-family use. It was originally designed and built as a single family. And the Kimballs lived in the right-hand side, which is the bigger of the 2 units. Their It's about a 2/3, 1/3 share of the floor area between the two units. So the Kimballs are in the larger unit. They have purchased over the last year and a half, 2 years, the smaller unit. And they are, well, this process continues. They are renting back to the prior owner the use of that smaller unit because it's still a legal 2-family. It would be converted through this approval, should we get it at the planning board, back into a single family. And there's a number of restoration related items that I'll talk about that we're going to do to that house. And behind that house is a more modern, very small outbuilding that we're not touching, but you can't see it on that image, but you'll see it on the site walk. There's like a small shed, that playhouse kind of building that will remain behind the Kimball's unit. And then behind that is a dilapidated shed that where the roof is collapsed. That would be removed and replaced with landscaping. It's really well beyond repair.
Yeah, slide 31.
Yeah. And then the rest of the site is open all the way down to Merrimack Court. And that we're proposing, originally we had the second house closer to Merrimack Court than we now have it. But that was largely a byproduct of a whole lot of public input from the neighbors as to where it would be best positioned to accommodate anything from views to the Merrimack that are seasonal from Merrimack Street, including from 342, the abutting property that went through this process for the 6C. They have some limited seasonal views across the back end of this property. We honored those by shifting the house up Union Place. What we're trying to do is recreate the edge that used to be here 100 to 150 years ago. We don't know exactly when the houses were removed, but originally, like the house next door that was recently built and designed by Dave Keary, that I think looks outstanding. There were 2 houses down there on Merrimack Court. The one just got built through a 6C, and we're hoping here to put the second one, and then I think the neighborhood will likely be done for a while. So it's that's the existing conditions. Can we go down to, I think 13 gives you, oh, is it not there? Proposed conditions. Can you, it's not, yeah, right there. Sorry. On the left, I can't see anything in the square. Okay, this is sideways, but you guys get it. The blue house at the top is the Levy Carr house, built in 1805, with the additions being scabbed on the left and the rear over time. That little blue building behind it is that accessory outbuilding that's going to remain. In this proposed condition, the shed, which would be at the end of the existing driveway you see there, is replaced with grass. And then below it, the brown buildings are the new single-family Cape style structure, 1.5 stories. I think it's only 23 feet in height. You've seen it. This is the same house that Brad has built on Ferry Road at 3 Roads, and the Atkinson Park across the road down on Elmira is another one. And I believe he's just constructed one of these at the bottom of Toppins Lane. So it's a great little house. It's really efficient. It's under 2,000 square feet. There's a little sunroom that will be on this one, like the house near Famous Pizza at 3 Roads. Essentially the exact same house, red cedar roof, granite steps, brick shelf. It's going to look like it was always there. And the 2-car garage is got no dormers, and it's pretty squat. It looks exactly like the garage on Elmira and probably on Toppins Lane. The landscaping, you see 4 trees going along Union Place. There's currently, I think, only 1 tree along there and a bunch of overgrown bushes as you come around Merrimack Court. We're gonna remove those to improve the sight lines of the turning movements up and down Union Place, which is obviously very narrow. It's almost like a service alley, but it is a street. And we're going to just go with a decorative fence along the street edge and then landscaping up to the existing house. So that's kind of, and the view easement is that little triangular section you see between the back corner of the house. And there's an existing mature elm tree that you see, articulated there along the lot line. It is on our property, but we're going to preserve it and protect it during construction. And that sits in that view easement down to the river from 242, again, the abutting property. Okay.
Yeah, if I could, and so
Yeah.
for the interruption, Nick. The thing that I think would be most helpful to us, in addition to the site visit, perhaps, is you mentioned things that you plan to do in the way of restoration and
Yeah.
and improvements. I think that would, and so things that relate to the historical features in nature and how you plan to protect, enhance, preserve those. That would be
Yeah,
helpful.
that's the next, that's exactly what I
okay,
was going
sorry.
to say next. So you got me. Okay, on the restoration piece, I think what you could do, Kate, is get maybe page 17. It enumerates them. It's not an image, but if you look, and it's a little hard to read there, but it's the first half of that page for the Levi Carr House, 1805. These are the improvements on the top half of that page that we're talking about for this structure. And we're certainly open to input, not only from you folks tonight and after the site walk or at the site walk, but also I do plan on reaching out to Tom and Stephanie and Linda to get any input from them on the material selection and any other ideas they might have on the restoration on the side. But just to quickly go through that list, we're looking at clearly replacing the vinyl replacement windows that have been added on that smaller unit that the Kimballs have just bought. They're 1/1 windows. They're totally inappropriate for that structure. And we'd like to have those removed. And unfortunately, the historic windows were permanently probably destroyed, but taken off the site when that was done. So we're going to be looking at replacement windows. We're thinking maybe Green Mountain, a simulated divided light, but a wood window that would match the Muntin pattern of the existing windows that are on Sam and Michelle's unit next door. But again, we need to get those material lists together and confirm them so everybody knows what's going into those openings. So we fully appreciate that need for more detail. We're looking at installing wood shutters. There used to be wood shutters on this structure. I'm sure they've come and gone over the 200 years it's been there, but we think it'd be a good feature, at least on Merrimack Street, to have shutters with period pintles and dogs on those shutters. The windows are really interesting on this building. The casements have shoulders or little ears at the top, which is pretty unique to Newburyport. There's a big central chimney that's character defining on this building, and it needs significant repair and repointing above the roof line. So we're planning on making those repairs on that chimney, at least above the roof. There are aluminum gutters and downspouts. We're proposing to replace those with half-round copper gutters and downspouts. That's a significant upgrade on the design of the house. The appearance of the house. There's a lot of clapboard damage. We're not proposing to take all the clapboards off, just do spot repairs, scrape and paint. And much smaller items here just along the streetscape. The Kimballs made the contribution to get the brick sidewalk, but they still have a concrete walkway going from the city sidewalk to the front door. We'd like to put a granite step there and continue the brick to the step. The front door, isn't bad, but if we can replace it with something that's more reflective of the original period, we'd like to do that. That's an item we'd like to discuss, not only with you, but the trust. And replace the front door lights and, get period lights installed on the pilasters. It's a great door surround that's on this building today. And just deal with some of the hardware issues, the post box and such. Put a historic marker sign on it that's consistent with what either the commission or the trust likes to see in Newburyport, and basically remove that dilapidated shed structure in the back. So that's a enumeration of at least the restoration components we're looking to incorporate into this project.
Yeah, one quick question, Nick. I went by there earlier today and I noticed on the front facade, the Merrimack Street facade, the front of the house, there were several different window styles. It looked like, if I recall, there was one that looked like it might have been original. It was like a 9/6. Does that sound familiar? Is that the one that you were referring to a minute ago? And you talked about trying to, replicate what is believed to be the original or nearly so window
Yeah,
configuration?
So to answer that, I think because there's a mix of styles,
Mhm.
I don't know that the Kimballs have the wherewithal to do the whole house in its original design. So I think we might want to
Right.
treat the front facade differently than the sides and the rear.
Mhm.
If we, you know, and my thought was, at least for thought here and conversation, that we would concentrate, in my mind, it's obvious we concentrate our efforts on the Merrimack Street facade, number one, and number two, the Union Place as you turn that corner, because it's very visible as you go up and down Merrimack Street, let alone down Union Place. And I don't know, Glenn, yet which window is the appropriate Muntin pattern to put there with. So I'm making a note of that, and I'll talk to Christine, and we'll talk to Tom and others, and we'll talk to you folks, and I'll try and get some answers from other folks. So when we're there at the site visit, I can share those with you and bounce those off the commission in respect to how we make it work without the Kimballs needing to buy 30 or 40 windows
Right.
to have them be uniform, because I don't think that's in their budget,
Right.
at least not yet. Okay, good. That's an excellent point. And if that was a suitable answer, I'll continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm almost done. I mean, that's the meat here in respect to the commission. You know, it's worth pointing out that one of the amendments made to 6C subsequent to 242, and maybe any other 6C you've seen, I don't know, because it's only been amended 11 months ago, the ordinance. There's a $40,000 impact fee now for a 6C for a building of 2,000 square feet. It's $20 a square foot that needs to go to the Affordable Housing Trust if one of these permits is approved. So I'm just bringing that to light as you look at these in the future. If you didn't already know that impact fee, obviously everything adds up and has an impact on what one can do in respect to both restoration, preservation, and revitalization. So I'm just pointing that out. That's all.
Yep. Yeah. Knew about that.
You know, we worked really hard to make this building fit into that context and not be overburdening. Obviously, it's a unique lot, unique neighborhood with that little couplet triangular street pattern. And, you know, again, I think Dave Curie and the builder did a great job next door. In my opinion, I love that house that just was inserted along Merrimack Court. And I think this is really going to finish that neighborhood nicely and complement the Levy Car House, as well as provide the Kimballs the resources to do the restoration, because they can't do it any other way than work with Brad on the lower section with the new house. So in the for what it's worth column, I think there's a lithograph in there that other people, including 242, use. That's where I found it, showing the two houses on Merrimack Court. Again, we're not putting the house exactly where it was there. We started in that location, but moved away due to input from the abutters and the board, the zoning board, and we're comfortable edging Union Place. And we're hopeful, I'm very hopeful, that putting this great little new house across from New England Development's boatyard that is dilapidated across the road will spur them on to do something to restore that building, because obviously now somebody's going to be staring at it every day when they come out of the Cape. So other than that, let me just see if I got anything else here. I mean, Christine does a great job, and in my opinion, putting together the narrative, the photographic evidence, the maps, and the deed references. And we'll get it right with Paul before we come back. We'll work out any of those kinks. And, you know, I think the restoration of this house will be an asset for Newburyport and this neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay. And just so we're clear, I think the planning board, I know I've talked to Caitlin and the planning office as far as what we were concerned. I know there were, there were those significantlies that were sprinkled in the PR. So you probably know about that. And there was exhibits A and B were absent. Other than that, it looked like you were really close on the PR to being where you need to be. So I don't think you're going to have a big problem just finishing that up. well, I do want to talk about the site visit, and but before I do, let me just see if any of my co-commissioners here have a question or a comment. So, anyone on the board have a question or comment for Mr. Cracknell? Yeah, Joe.
Yes, I don't have a question about the content here or the proposal for the added structure and the renovation of the historical property. But I would just like to state, if you allow me, my understanding of how this process is working. I was confused about it the last time we did 342, and I think I'm a little bit still confused just how we got here. As I understand it from Mr. Cracknell's presentation, is that there was a zoning board application or an application to a proposal to convert the two-family to a single family, and then because the property is already categorized as a two-family, to build an additional separate single-family house, thereby preserving the two-family qualification of the particular property in its entirety. And that's in lieu of subdividing the property and sharing that property for each structure, because there's also an ordinance that prohibits that, presumably. So those are dimensional requirements. They had to, as I understand it, the applicant had to go in front of the zoning board because there were non-conforming dimensional requirements, and the zoning board said, that's fine, you know, that this works. However, but not enough to subdivide the property. It still would only they would only allow the 6C application or the 6C conditions, which was to grant which carries the requirement for the PR. In other words, all this is baked into that 6C ordinance, and that was the only option that the owner had in order to build this additional structure on that property. Now, if that's true, then it appears that the PR is a legal document setting out the covenants, the restrictions, the requirements to maintain that property, as I understand it, in perpetuity. And that would be for any of the future purchasers or heirs or assigns. All of those people would be buying into these covenants. And then, so our job, which is really where I'm going with this, what I'm trying to understand is the job of the Historical Commission is to somewhat review the language of the PR, but what we really want to do is make sure that the condition of the property moving forward at time zero, which is what this document is speaking to. In other words, it's the covenant that will apply. What is the condition of the property at time zero? What do we want it to look like, and what features do we want it to have? It seems to me that's what's being asked of us, to set that initial condition that corresponds to how the property, the historical property only, shall be preserved going forward. And then, of course, all of this needs to be ratified by the planning board. Have I got this sort of right?
Let me see if I can really briefly. You got most of it right. The one piece that's a little bit not quite right is the role of the ZBA. The ZBA might not have ever been involved, except for the fact that because of setbacks requirements and so on, they need some variances for those. The Section 6C spells out a role for the Historical Commission and the Planning Board. The Historical Commission, you correctly stated, we are to hold the preservation restriction, and that's part of what is required in exchange, if you will, for the granting of the special permit, which would allow two residences or two residential structures on one lot. Normally, that's not required. Actually, not permitted. And
But there's no other formula for achieving that on this particular lot. There's no other way to provide a second structure on that lot other than to go through the 6C process.
Well, yeah, I see your hand there, Nick. Let me just say one thing, and I'll see if you want to add to it. What's the twist here, Joe, is that that when the lot contains a historic structure, that triggers this whole 6C thing with the preservation restriction and all that. If everything was the same, only the house was, let's say, 1965, then we probably wouldn't be sitting here. Nick, did you want to? Am I correct? And B, did you want to?
Yeah, I think you're doing a great job. I would just add, really, everybody is. Good questions, Joe. And I just want to point out that we never asked for a subdivision, and we went in there seeking dimensional relief only for filing a 6C. So the 6C requires 15,000 square feet. We don't have it. So that's why we went there first. And they certainly did not want to prejudice your commission or the planning board in saying, hey, if we approve the dimensional variance, we think the 6C should be approved. But they were supportive of the overall project at the end of reviewing all the gritty details. But what's really important, I think, for Newburyport, that's great for Newburyport, is, you know, if this lot had been large enough to subdivide, we know that occurs in places in the city with larger lots. Then there's no design review, there's no PR, and there's no affordable housing payment. Somebody just does whatever they want with their property. So what's advantageous here for the city through the special permit of the 6C is the fact that it brings all of you together to meet these, you know, mutually supportive objectives of the city to get, as you say, the perpetuity of the PR. And I think, Joe, to your point about, it's a good one, the starting point, you know, where does this start in respect to the condition of the building? And we're proposing that list you see on the screen of the 10 or 11 items, some of them are on the landscape versus the building, but let's just say there's 10 items on there. That to us will be, we want approvals for those. We want them to be part of the approval. That the PR will recognize we're going to put in granite steps. We're going to replace those vinyl windows. And we will present to you more detail on the window design before we're done here. But it's a good point. We need to establish what the existing condition will be at the time we record a PR.
Right.
So can I just follow up, Nick? I wanted to go back to the variances that were approved by the zoning board. I believe that they have been approved in order for you to take this next step.
Correct.
And bring it to NHC. Could you said that the dimensional variances were requested for the setbacks, but not for lot size?
No,
do you
both.
think you might have gotten it?
Both lot size and setback.
And lot size also?
Yes. But not to subdivide, just to be able to apply.
What would that have entailed? To
subdivision?
Is it the ZBA that would have granted the ability to subdivide at the smaller lot coverage or the smaller lot size?
Yes, but it would have been a very big ask because it's 10,000 square feet for a single family house lot and we only have 14. So they would have been two 7,000 square foot lots. We felt that was too big of an ask. I think Kate would agree with that. So we just asked for the 1,100 square feet to keep the two family the way we have it now and go with the 6C and provide the public benefits and get the support of the neighborhood.
So the public benefit, which is the restoration of the historical property and the preservation restriction that's going to be placed on it, that is perceived as the public benefit in exchange for allowing the subdivision of the lot.
Not a subdivision, but two singles on one lot.
Or excuse me, two
that's what you
structures
meant.
on the one lot. Very
yeah,
good.
not. But don't forget the $40,000 payment that has to go into the Affordable Housing Trust, and the fact that there's design review on both buildings and the entire site as inherent in this kind of discretionary permitting.
So Okay, so really all of this is spelled out in the administrative procedural flow of the ordinance. This is all predetermined, and this was the only way that this would evolve or could evolve in order to accommodate two structures on this one lot.
I would agree with you unless they were to grant two 7,000 square foot lots, which I'm doubtful they would do. So in essence, I'm in agreement with you.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And I'll just say one quick comment, Joe. As far as it being spelled out, the one piece of this, which is also similar to 344 Merrimack Street, that isn't quite spelled out, but is something we need to work through with the applicant, is again getting back to your point about the starting point, as both Nick and yourself mentioned, making sure that we're comfortable with what's going to be done and not done, what's going to be preserved, and similar to what we did with the house next door. And I think I mentioned at our last meeting that they have submitted a timetable to begin working on the restoration and improvement stuff that they had promised they would do on 342. And I see Andrew's got a hand up for a while. Andrew,
Yeah, I actually, you just answered it. I really wanted us to define what our accountability is. It sounds like our accountability is certainly on the historic structure. Is it for the new residents as well?
No, I don't think so. No, our sole purview here is to review the historic structure, the one that is listed. It's got a Form B. It's listed as contributing, etc. As Nick pointed out, the public good, if you will, is the preservation of that. And when as often happens, there are things that are in need of improvement, repair, restoration. We basically want to end up with a historic property that looks as it should, is properly maintained as it should, which is spelled out in all the standard preservation requirements. They all have a requirement for maintenance and insurance and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's all our purview. I think Nick mentioned the other things as far as the other structure and the design review and all that, but most of those do not fall under our jurisdiction, if you will.
Okay.
I do think so. To that point of establishing the conditions and what needs and doesn't need to be done. I know I'm interested in going through a site visit with either Mr. Cracknell or someone from some representative who could do that with us. And it sounded like, Nick, I think you said you had some potential dates. So I'm hoping that we can find a date that all or most of us would be able to do that with you.
So I got a couple of dates from Sam and Michelle. It would Saturday, May 7th or Sunday, the 8th work, or do you prefer a weekday? Give me a sense of what works for you, but they're good on the 7th and 8th, in the morning or even afternoon, Saturday or Sunday, next weekend, not this weekend.
Okay.
Might that work?
Well, okay. Just FYI, the 8th is Mother's Day.
Don't forget that. Yeah, Sam. All right, let's try Saturday at 7.
I can do Saturday at 7. How about Andrew, Joe, and Chris?
I'm looking right now. Yes.
Yeah,
What
we'll do
time?
9 o'clock if that's all right on the 7th.
That's better than 7.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, that's good for me too.
May 7th at 9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock, yep.
Excellent.
Mr. Fay, do you think you could do that?
Yep, I can do that.
Oh,
I
great.
can do that.
I'm putting it in my calendar right now. Site visit, 344 Merrimack. And we said 9, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay, 9 a.m. Okay. And will you be there or someone else, Mr. Cracknell?
I'll be there and I may have Christine there. And I'll invite Tom, Linda, and Stephanie, if that's okay with you folks. Just
sure. Yeah, they often attend those. I view our kind of relationship as collegial and collaborative and supportive, so I have no objection to that.
Great. So do I.
Okay, so we'll do that. And if now one last thing before we leave the topic altogether, if you guys, by you guys meaning Andrew, Joe, and Chris, noticed anything, any feedback you would like to give on the preservation restriction that for them to take back? I know a couple of things that Caitlin and I have already relayed to Nick about this. There was some missing exhibits those are obvious. I think the tricky part will be, and this may really, we'll probably flesh this out in the site visit, will be exactly nailing down taking that list of things that we were looking at a minute ago on page, whatever it was, 17 or whatever, and saying, is this good, bad, and different? Do we need to add or subtract anything? And I think what we can easily do is simply have an exhibit, rather than kind of muck about with the actual PR itself, Nick, refer to it as an exhibit. I think that would be cleaner and easier for both us and the Mass Historic Commission to deal with as you know what I mean?
Yep.
As part of kind of an auxiliary to the existing conditions, or baseline conditions. You're saying, okay, here's the baseline as of May 2022, but this work is required to be done as part of the whole deal here. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, comments before we close this item on the agenda?
Glenn, might we be continued to the 12th, or is that too early to again as a placeholder? And if we're not ready, are you meeting on the 12th of May?
Yeah, we are. That's my understanding.
We'd request to come back with the whatever
Sure.
we end up with, if that works. And if we're not ready, we'll ask for a continuance to the
Sure.
26th. Okay.
Yep. You have
Perfect.
that, Caitlin, you got that, I assume?
Got that. Thank you.
Okay, yep. Caitlin, we'll put that on the calendar for the 12th. Yep. And we'll hear from you again then. So thanks for coming down. Is there anything you need to add, Nick, or are you all set for now?
I'm all set. Thank you everyone for your input. And I look forward to meeting some of the new members I might not know.
Yeah.
We'll see you on the 7th at 9.
Okay, thank you. And just for the elucidation to our board members, those of you who haven't been around as long, Mr. Cracknell was formerly a planning director in the city of Newburyport, Massachusetts.
Don't hold that against me.
We'll try not to. Okay,
All right.
thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, who's sharing now? Is it you, Caitlin? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, we're almost done. Let's see. We've got some general business. I hope you had a chance to review the minutes from the 14th of April. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion to approve.
Okay, that was Andrew. I'm recognizing your voice, Andrew. And second.
This is Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So your vote on that, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Fay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Bernhardt.
Yes.
And the chair also concurs. They were fine. The updates, the only update I have is about the resignation of Peter. So basically what he said was just, so hang on, let me grab it real quick. Here it is. So he sent me a copy he said on April 26th, 2 days ago, he sent me a copy of his resignation letter, which he said he was sending to the mayor that afternoon. So presumably he has done so. So I assume this is official. Basically, and he had some kind words to say about you all, members of the commission, and your hard work. And it's a very brief letter, but I just want to read the part about why he resigned. He said it was to his regret, and I'm quoting here, but in the wake of the Newburyport City Council's vote on April 11th to refer the settlement between the city and the Institution for Savings for reconsideration, I am left to conclude that the City Council places more value on the interests of the IFS than on the carefully considered recommendations and hard work of the city's volunteer commissions. So I don't I'm not endorsing or agreeing or disagreeing with that. That was Peter's view, and I respect it. And I know he was very much involved with that. That's why he recused himself from our deliberations on that particular project. Andrew, that was before your time. I know
Yes.
Joe remembers it very well, as does Chris. Sorry to see Peter go. He'll be missed, and we'll have to go about seeing if we can recruit. We still have not only his position, but those two associate, or what are they called? Anyway, secondary, alternate. Thank you, alternate members.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that was that. If there are no other questions or comments, the chair would be happy to hear a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
And it's Andrew, I second it.
Joe, you said that with a definite note of fatigue in there. Hopefully that was just me reading
Just
into it.
trying to
Okay.
be economical.
Okay. Your vote on that, Mr. Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, not unexpected. Mr. Fay?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Bernhardt?
Yes.
Thank you. And the chair makes the final required vote. We need 4 votes, 4 affirmative votes to actually approve anything. So we have approved the adjourning of the meeting. So with that, I'll bid you all a good night. Thank you, as always, for your time, your attention, your hard work. Really appreciate it. And I bid you all to have a pleasant rest of the evening.
Likewise
Thank you.
to
Have
the
a good
chair.
night.
Night.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.